Right now, let's discuss this and other political stories. We're now joined via Zoom by political analyst Thobani Zikalala. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Perhaps let's start here. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya earlier briefing the media saying that the president will make, an announcement soon as it relates to the new deputy president of the country and will also in a matter of days, in fact, announce his new cabinet. So what are your thoughts in Paul Mashatile's prospects, firstly, and of course the anticipation of seeing this electricity minister?
Greetings to you and greetings to your viewers. I think we've all been seeing that David Mabuza, of course, has been having resigned because he's not been elected in the last conference of the ANC, has meant that his influence in the ANC and his position is brought into question. Paul Mashatile, of course, the tradition in the ANC dictates that deputy president of the ANC becomes the deputy president of the country. But we've also seen where the chief whip of the ANC saying that is not an ANC policy. I think also it shows that those are within the Ramaphosa camp in some way do not have not shown confidence in Paul Mashatile as a right candidate to deputize the president. But of course, this is against tradition, as I've said, because every deputy president of the ANC has subsequently became deputy president of the country. We wait to see whether the president will then be able to follow that tradition. But also, this tradition will be followed having a look at the next ANC conference and what it means to give power to Paul Mashatile, who's been known as a very serious political operator inside the ANC.
All right, let's talk now about other, political stories that we are currently seeing, interesting developments we've seen come out of the Tshwane Council. What do you make of it, especially when you look at the alliances there between some parties?
I think what we've had in the past from those who were in the coalition with the DA, which was previously governing the city of Tshwane, is a matter of political disciplining of the DA, which has been viewed as a politically arrogant partner who did not want to enter into the multilateral conversations around the running of the city, and also bringing into confidence its coalition partners. And of course, with the ANC having had a long interest of trying to depose the DA, you see that the ANC has finally maybe come to a position where they understand that they don't have to govern by all means, because smaller parties are beginning to show their powers and struck their and move and struck their muscles to show that their small votes do not necessarily mean that you do not have power. And the idea of kingmakers being kings themselves, we don't know what is going to happen going forward. With the city of Tshwane has been embattled with a lot of governance issues that need to be dealt with. We know how Randall, the former mayor, lost his position because, of course, of the unhappiness of the coalition partners of the DA. But as I've said, majority parties, the DA, the ANC, and others need to learn that political arrogance will not work in making sure that these coalition governments work. But also South Africa needs to have a very serious introspection about these coalition governments and whether they are the right routes to be able to manage our fledgling democracy. Because we have seen in the past that these coalitions have not been stable enough to make sure that the primary duty of government of providing good public goods and services to the citizenry and making sure that there is good governance in these cities has not yielded the necessary results. There's very few coalition governments in this country which have shown us that the coalition government route is the only one. Maybe there needs to be a real conversation around the laws that govern such coalition partnerships.
And one would obviously also want to argue then and ask the question, are we really seeing smaller parties gaining momentum, or is this a push from alliances of some arrogant parties, as you've mentioned. But let's stay with the DA, in particular, what you were talking about in terms of political arrogance. Many say that it would seem like the DA is currently losing its grip at local government level. Do you think they need to change their strategy, perhaps?
I think necessarily the DA will need to relook the way that it manages its coalition partnerships, because the accusations from smaller parties, the DA cannot solely rely on the fact that they're an opposition party and they are having these coalition partners with other coalition parties. That cannot be the only ticket that they use to make sure that they enter and be able to manage these coalitions, because it has shown in many of these instances that all parties that have been in partnership with the DA have confirmed that they are, one of their problems is the political arrogance of the DA, and the DA acting like a boss in these coalitions, not understanding that merely being a majority does not necessarily mean that everything needs to go according to your way, because these parties which are smaller will become kingmakers, have played a very much important critical role to play in making sure that these coalitions happen and are able to be managed properly. The DA needs a very serious introspection inside its own party in how it's going to manage coalition governments going forward, because the way that they've managed them currently seem to have not worked, and smaller parties seem to be going back to working with the ANC, which all of them claim that they are opposing.
Very quickly as we wrap, seeing that you are talking about having to introspect, the party is having its National Congress soon where new leaders are to be elected. What impact then do you think these developments will have in, say, rebuilding the DA?
I think that the coalition issue must be a very critical discussion point in the Congress of the DA. Any leader of the DA needs to really be in tune and have a clear strategy of how they can be able to regain ground in the local government structures that they've been part of, to make sure that they regain trust of their coalition partners and other opposition parties. Because in currently, they seem to have lost their trust. They need to make sure that when they go to this conference, in Congress, they are able to really pin down in terms of a strategy of how this is going to work going forward.
All right, Thobani, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it this afternoon. Political analyst Thobani Zikalala there, just giving us input on political stories across the week.